Hi, and welcome to this training video, Onboard a Server to Azure Arc. We're going to discuss what is Azure Arc, and we're going to onboard our very first server to Azure Arc. Again, this is a brief overview just to get you started with Azure Arc. All we need is an active subscription. If you don't have one, create one. It's free. In order to do this lab, you must have portal access as an administrator, virtual machine contributor permissions, or as a global admin. Azure Arc enables you to project your on-premises and cloud resources such as virtual or physical servers and Kubernetes clusters into the Azure Resource Manager. This extends the Azure management to any infrastructure, enabling you to manage resources as if they were running in Azure. Arc gives you the ability to manage and monitor Windows and Linux machines that reside outside of Azure, such as Google Cloud, AWS Cloud, Alibaba Cloud, and any other place, or even on-prem. Deploying an agent causes the machine to become Arc enabled. An Arc enabled server or servers can be managed in this way and can be consistent with the Azure native virtual machines. It allows you to bring in servers from on-premise infrastructure, other cloud providers such as AWS, Google, Alibaba Cloud, and so on. As you can see from this Azure Arc diagram, we can see we have the Azure Management Control Plane or Resource Manager. We then have Arc, and of course you've got your virtual machines, servers, clusters, Kubernetes clusters, servers, data services, SQL Server, Postgre, SQL, Kubernetes, and Rudo and Dapr application services, and other Kubernetes clusters. Again, these can all be brought in to Azure Arc. With Azure Arc, Microsoft is enabling enterprises with legacy infrastructure to join a hybrid cloud bandwagon. A physical x86 server running a decade-old version of Oracle or Linux can easily register itself with Azure Arc to show up in the portal in the same resource group and the same region that runs a modern elastic web application that talks to a legacy database. Microsoft is not alienating customers running legacy hardware and VMs from the hybrid cloud. VMs are treated as first-class citizens in the world of Azure Arc. So Microsoft has really come to the party to allow us to run our older infrastructure and manage it within a hybrid environment using Azure Arc. Again, it's an amazing tool. Think of the movie Lord of the Rings, one ring to rule them all. That's exactly what Azure Arc does. It allows you to bring in everything from different places and manage it all in a single pane. Just absolutely fantastic. Again, as you can see, our lab layout, we're going to have an on-prem VM which is running in Hyper-V. We're going to then import that into Arc, and then of course we're going to see that machine show up in Arc. So phase one would obviously be downloading the agent. Phase two would then run the agent, and phase three would then deploying it so that it shows up in Azure Arc. I encourage you guys to go and look at the hyperlink below. It'll give you a whole lot more information on Azure Arc. Again, this demo is just designed to get you up and running, deploying your first server into Azure Arc. So I hope you guys have fun, and hope you guys learn something. Some of you may know how to do this, some of you may not, but anyway, just think of it as a refresher. So that being said, let's scoot over to the portal and let's get this lab done. Hi, as you can see, I've gone ahead and logged into the portal. So in order to onboard a server to Azure Arc, the first thing we need to do is create a resource group. So I'm going to select resource groups. I'm going to click create, and I'm going to paste in my resource group called Azure Arc Lab. Click review and create, and click create. This is going to go away, it's going to do a validation, and then it's going to go ahead and create that resource group for us. As you can see, the bell notification is telling us that the resource group was created successfully. I'm going to close that down and go to my bell notification and just dismiss that notification. The next thing we want to do is we want to navigate to Azure Arc Services or the Blade and actually start looking at getting our server imported into that Blade. So what you can do is, I've got Azure Arc Services here. If you don't have it here, just type in servers in your search menu at the top here and select Azure Arc. Now this brings us to the Azure Arc Blade. Click add, and now we can go ahead and add our on-prem server. Now, if we had a single server, we could download a script for a single server. But if you had 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100, thousands of servers, you could then download this script, and this script is designed to bring in multiple servers into your Azure Arc blade. And the nice thing about the Azure Arc blade is we can bring in on-prem servers. We can bring in servers from AWS. We can bring in servers from Google Cloud. We can bring in servers from Alibaba Cloud. And we can manage them all in Azure. Think of Azure Arc. If any of you have watched Lord of the Rings movie, one ring to rule them all, that's exactly what Azure Arc does. It allows you to bring everything in from different locations and manage your server from one plane. So let's go ahead and click Generate Script, and let's go Next. And of course, we want to select our resource group that we created called Azure Arc Lab. Again, we could bring in a Linux servers or Windows servers. In our case, I'm going to bring in a Windows server. Let's go ahead and click Next. And as you can see, Azure Arc services have some nice tags for us. We can type in the name of the data center, the city or the state or the country or the region. We could add all of this info in there. And of course, we can go ahead and create custom tags as well. We're not worried about tags because in this training session, we just want to learn how to bring in our very first server into the Azure Arc blade. So I'm going to go ahead and download that script. And as you can see, it gives me the script in a PowerShell format. I can obviously copy the script and put it into my server on-prem or my server that's in AWS or Google Cloud or AliExpress, run it and bring it into Azure Arc services. So I'm going to go ahead and download this script. And of course, my Google web browser, is telling me that this could harm my device just because it's reading it as a PowerShell script. I'm going to select this button here. I'm going to go to the downloads page and I'm going to say keep. And I'm going to show this in my folder. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy this script. I'm going to minimize this and I'm going to fire up my machine. And as you can see, I've got a virtual server running in Hyper-V. So I'm going to scoot over to my Hyper-V server. Here it is. I just want to show you a few things. I'm going to right mouse click here and just click paste and paste that script in there. I'm also going to go to File Explorer. I'm going to right mouse click. I'm going to go to Properties, and you can see this tells me my server name, the type of operating system that I have, and that's absolutely fine. We're going to close that down. I'm going to close that down. In order to connect, obviously you need to have an internet connection to onboard your server to Azure Arc. So I'm going to right mouse click and run with PowerShell, and this is going to go away and run some scripts for us. So we'll just wait a second or two while it runs. And as you can see, it didn't take too long to run. So what I want to do is we want to highlight this and we want to open up a web browser and paste this in. So I'm going to click copy by right mouse clicking. I'm going to open up Google. I'm going to go ahead and paste that in and press enter, and it's going to ask us for a validation code, and it'll be that code over there. I'm going to highlight that code over here, right mouse click. I'm going to open up my web page again, and I'm going to paste that code in and click next. Now that's going to go away. I'm going to sign in with my Azure credentials. I'm going to click continue. You may be prompted for a username and password. Obviously your IT admins would have that, or you would have that. Just type that in, it would validate, and then you would click continue. And this would go away now and add our server to Azure Arc. And it can take a couple of seconds to add. It's very, very quick. So I'm going to go ahead and close this down, and we'll just wait a second or two. In the meantime, I'm just going to minimize this. I'm just going to minimize this. I'm going to close this down, and I'm going to go back to Azure Arc. And we're just going to give it a second or two before it populates across. It shouldn't take too long. I'm just going to hit the refresh button, and we'll just wait a couple more seconds for it to think about it. And as you can see, I've hit the refresh button, and there's my server, my on-prem server. It's boarded into Azure Arc. If I click on my server name, I can see exactly what resource group it's in. I can see the name of the operating system, and of course I could see my server name. I could go ahead and do managed updates from here. I could enable log monitoring. I could do monitoring insights, policies, security center. Again, I can come down here and go to the locks as well, and I could lock that server. I can go to update manager and choose what updates I want to push out to that machine. Obviously, I need to create a workspace, but again, at the end of the day, the whole idea with this lab is to get you up and running with your first server in Azure Arc. And as you can see, it's pretty simple to do. Again, if we go over into our resource groups and we select our lab, we can see here in our resource groups that we have our Azure Arc running here. And of course, it's taken us straight to the server. If we click on that, that'll bring us straight into our server. And again, we can manage and do bits and pieces from here. Now, let's say you decided, well, I don't need that server anymore. How do I go about deleting that server? That's pretty easy. All we do is navigate back to servers or Azure Arc, click on your server, and of course, once we're in our server blade, it's as simple as clicking delete. We go ahead and click the delete button and say yes, and this will go ahead and delete that server for us. We will then go in and remove our resource group, and then of course we would log on to our on-prem server and remove the agent. So as you can see, that didn't take too long to do. So we'll navigate back to our server. I can grab everything there and I can go ahead and delete all of that. I can go ahead and select control panel by typing in control, go to control panel, go to programs and features. I can select the agent, I can click uninstall, and that would remove the agent so that I'm removing my server from the Azure Arc blade cleanly. I can go ahead and close that down. I can minimize that. I can navigate back to my resource groups, and as you can see, my Azure Arc server is no longer there, and I can go ahead and delete that resource group as well by clicking copy, clicking delete, and go ahead and paste that in and delete that resource group. The reason I'm doing this is because in a lot of my labs, if you're studying from home, you always want to tidy up and clean up behind you so that you're not going to be charged for things that you're not using. And it's just good practice as well to go ahead and remove stuff that you don't need. If you are in a live production environment, I would double check with your IT admins, your manager, or the engineers involved. Do not just go and delete and remove stuff without permission. Again, we'll just wait for a minute or two while this deletes, and then we'll do a refresh, and then we'll do a wrap up. And as you can see, it's gone ahead and it's deleted that resource group. I can go ahead and dismiss all of those notifications, and if I wanted to, I could do a refresh to make sure that resource group was removed. So hopefully in this lab you've learned how to create a resource group, how to deploy your first server into Azure Arc. And just bear in mind, the cool thing with Azure Arc is you can have a server in AWS cloud platform, a Google cloud platform, an Alibaba cloud platform, or on-prem, and you can just run that script and bring those servers into your Azure portal, go to Azure Arc services, and you can manage all of those services from one plane, whether it be a Windows server or a Linux server. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to subscribe to my channel. I'd like to thank you again for following me on LinkedIn and being part of my LinkedIn network group. I mean, you guys are just awesome. Again, be awesome, you Azure gurus, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.